Looking back at Kane Lynch Dog Days, it still is one of them titles which really does sort of remind me of games that waste their potential. Now, Dead Men wasn't the best game ever. Let's put that straight. It was an alright game, but unfortunately the gameplay wasn't that fluent. Some of the game mechanics were fiddly and unnecessary, but it did have a pretty decent twist on the multiplayer in the shape of Fragile Alliance. Overall, the game didn't really fulfill its potential, as I said before, and it went down as just another title in a busy, hectic lineup back in 2008. And then Dog Days came out in last year in August. Now, Dog Days was trying a few new things. It was trying this almost amateur footage visual style, which gave it this sense of originality when you first seen the announcement trailers. But when you got hold of the game, unfortunately, a lot of the problems from Dead Men did persist in the Dog Days. The problem with Dog Days is, one, the amateur footage is very hit and miss. You'll find some people that enjoy it and some people that absolutely despise it. It really is a bit of a Marmite situation there. I personally believe that it was an alright way to go, and it did cover up some rather poor animation and some rather lackluster visuals, but it did add a sense of uniqueness to Kane Lynch Dog Days, which without it would have been a very, very mediocre average game and would have faded into a sea of many other games that came out in 2010. The story wasn't all that good. I'm not going to go into specific detail purely for time reasons. It just involves the same old murder, revenge, guns and swearing, and yeah, some strange use of old man ass. One of the main problems with Kane Lynch Dog Days is the environments. There isn't a huge range of them, and thanks to the amateur footage, most of them actually tend to look the same. Very void of colour, bar a couple of sections where you're in downtown China, fighting among shops with neon lights. Them bits are the only real injections of colour. Other than that, prepare to see a grey, dreary world. The gameplay has been improved upon from Dead Men, with bullet registration actually being a little bit more accurate this time, and weapons causing damage, which was a huge issue surprisingly. In Dead Men, a lot of the weapons didn't actually do a lot of damage to the enemy. One thing that hasn't really changed is the weapon accuracy. You'll often find, especially in expert mode, that you cannot hit the enemy unless you're extremely close. There's only a couple of weapons within the game that actually are very accurate and satisfying to use. So for a game that centres around third person gunplay, the whole situation isn't really passable when the gameplay isn't that solid and the gunplay isn't that solid. What I will say is the cover system was improved upon, and it does work well. Not as well as other games in the market such as Gears of War, but it does hold itself to satisfaction. The single player campaign isn't all that long. In fact, it's probably one of the shortest ones I actually played in 2010, and probably one of the shortest ones I've played on Xbox 360 altogether. It finishes very abruptly with one of the lamest, half-arsed endings I have ever experienced in video games. But saying that, there is a sense of slight enjoyment when you're playing the game via co-op. Although the only co-op actions you're really going to find is opening doors, and believe me, there's a lot of opening doors which can become extremely repetitive. Unfortunately, the sense of repetition really is Dog Days' biggest flaw. You'll often find yourself repeating movements and combat in very, very repetitive ways. True, you could say the same thing about other games such as Gears of War, as I mentioned before, but Gears of War tend to be more fluent in gameplay and thus more enjoyable. Dog Days is not. Other problems lie in some jolty movements, some strange animations, and obtrusive voice acting which just randomly throws swear words into the mix for no apparent reason. It's not a huge issue, but it does play somewhat of a part. Throughout the missions you'll only find a couple of variations in gameplay, such as sitting in a helicopter, firing into an office block. It does grant a little bit of a sense of empowerment. That's only for the first couple of seconds. The rest of the level just comes off as extremely repetitive. Multiplayer does return in the shape of Fragile Alliance, which was arguably Deadman's best feature. As well as this, Undercover Cop and Cops and Robbers return, all pretty much using the same formula with certain twists. Unfortunately, all the issues from the core gameplay do carry on to this, making the game mode experience a little bit of a chore to play through, and again, much like Deadman, it feels like the potential was lost. Looking back on Kane Lynch, Deadman and Dog Days, both of them are not very good titles, but they do offer a sense of enjoyment if you're into your gangster films, or you're just looking to burn a couple of hours into some stupid action. And for the price, you can pick them both up at £10 each. You'd be arguing with yourself whether you can find something in the same bracket and the same price that will offer as much enjoyment. Achievement hunters will be able to get some enjoyment out of the titles with easy achievement points, but that being said, anyone that's looking for a truly memorable gaming experience will not find it in either of these games. My final closing thoughts on Dog Days and indeed Deadman is both games were massive misses with potential. Both games managed to carry somewhat of a story, even though it felt half-arsed, and the gameplay never really truly improved to the standard you would expect, which left Kane Lynch somewhat as forgettable characters in a forgettable franchise. In fact, the only real memorable thing both characters have featured in was the Tomb Raider game, The Guardians of Light. That being said, for the price you can pick these up at now, I would say it's worth giving it a look at, but don't expect anything spectacular.